Recognizing the member for Peace River South.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this Monday morning during this time, and especially talking about something that's so front and center right now in the province of British Columbia, and that's the fact that people are struggling. People are struggling right across the province in every corner with affordability, whether it's the price of gas, whether it's the price of food, whether it's the price of housing. When we look right across the province right now, people are struggling. And nothing's more apparent than right now what people are sharing with me in my region, which I would argue is for the entire province. It's the little extra things which are actually quite large. And that's things like carbon tax and what the effects that has on our home heating. Now, as we know, the federal government, not that long ago, I guess it would be maybe 6 months, it was before the winter, talked about removing carbon tax off of home heating, which on the surface was something I was very excited for, until I found out that it was only going to affect half of the country. It was only going to affect the eastern provinces, which when we looked at that, we thought, okay, obviously we need to change that. It needs to be something that is going to be treated fairly for all the people in Canada. So I was very proud of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, who the premiers and the governments in those provinces of all political stripes, so it's not a political commentary on that, different premiers stood up and said, this isn't fair. We need to be removing carbon tax off of home heating for everybody in Canada, which was great to see. Except, of course, here in British Columbia, where we heard crickets and it was silent. And I can tell you that for people in a riding like mine, how frustrating that is. Last week, it was almost minus 35 again in Dawson Creek. So contrary to what people were seeing, and I think I was even sharing some of those pictures, that up until mid-February, we didn't have snow on the ground. It was quite nice, and unfortunately, we need more snow. We need the moisture, and I'm really worried about what we're going to have for the agricultural sector this year. But when it's minus 35, guess what? Those that are fortunate enough to be able to afford a house in the province of British Columbia right now, even though we have the most unaffordable housing in North America, those that are lucky enough don't have an option in my region, and I'd say in most of rural British Columbia, but to have a natural gas furnace. This is not an option, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity that people have some way to heat their homes. And guess what that is? It's a natural gas furnace. In some places, even here on Vancouver Island, for quite a while, we had oil. And as a government, we were really promoting get off of oil and move to natural gas. In fact, there were grants being given out by government. Please convert to natural gas. Here's a grant to do that. But now, we have not only the carbon tax, April 1st, we're hearing it's going to go up again. Government wants to raise it up to $165 a ton. When we talk about people right now who can't afford groceries, or they're having to choose between, do I pay my large natural gas bill that has a huge amount of carbon tax on it, or do I buy groceries? The amount of people that call me and say, you know what, I'm having to pick and choose every month what I'm doing. But if we're going to make life more affordable, look at those opportunities we have. Now, I wish that we had followed suit like the other provinces in the eastern seaboard after the federal announcement, right before the cold snap and winter started, because we can imagine the hundreds and hundreds, and in some cases thousands of dollars that would have been left in people's pockets to help them. When more than half of British Columbians are only $200 away from being able to make their monthly bill payments, nothing would hit home more than something like removing carbon tax off of home heating, which is at the discretion of this government. Look, we know that carbon tax is federally mandated, that we can't remove it here in British Columbia completely, otherwise the federal government steps in. So contrary to what some people are saying about removing carbon tax completely, we know that can't be done unless the federal government does. But there are aspects and portions of it that actually can, in British Columbia, be changed. And home heating on carbon tax is one of them. And I think it's paramount to remind people that this is not just the struggles of people in a home. I've got a bill that I shared here in the House last week where somebody who owned a small little mini mall of 6 small businesses, and their bill last month, $3,000, was the carbon tax portion. So you want to talk about also not just homes, but look at the impacts it would have to small businesses that are struggling. $3,000 in carbon tax for 2 months. These are opportunities that we have here in British Columbia that can be looked at. When we look at, again, putting money back into people's pockets, and this, to my point that I made a few moments ago, this is not a luxury. This is a necessity. People do not have a choice but to turn their thermostat up and their furnace on in the province of British Columbia, in most places. And I've heard even people who live down in the Lower Mainland here in North Vancouver. I had somebody mention to me that it is cheaper and easier to turn on my natural gas fireplace than it is to use my electric heat because it puts me into a 2-tier system, and I can't afford that, and every opportunity to save a little bit of money. But this government wants to penalize people for using natural gas and for trying to stay warm in the wintertime. So I look forward to the comments from the other member on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, member.